When Amara came home after finishing her college studies, the house felt different. The same walls, the same rooms, and the same smell of her mother's cooking were there. But something was not right. She could feel it the moment she stepped through the gate. The air felt heavier, like people were holding back words that no one wanted to say aloud. Her mother ran to her with open arms, smiling wide. But even her smile looked tired. Her father was sitting on the porch pretending to read the newspaper, though his eyes weren't moving across the page. Her older sister, Layla, came out a few minutes later, dressed neatly as always, her phone in her hand, typing something fast. "You're back," Layla said, giving Amara a quick hug that lasted barely a second. "Yes," Amara replied softly. "It feels good to be home." They went inside together and the talk was light at first. Her mother asked about her final exams, her hostel life, and her friends. Amara answered happily, but deep down, she noticed that no one else seemed really present. Her father's replies were short. Layla was distracted. Even the laughter felt forced. Later that evening, when the guests had gone and the lights were dim, Amara sat in her old room, unpacking her bag. She touched the book she had brought with her, a reminder of the peaceful days at university. That's when she heard her parents' low voices from the living room. "She's back now," her mother said softly. "Maybe it's time we tell her." "Not yet," her father replied. "Let's see how things go first. We can't rush this. You know how sensitive she is." Amara froze. She didn't know what they were talking about, but the tone of their voices told her it was something serious. She tried not to think too much about it that night, but the question followed her to sleep. The next morning, the house was full of visitors. Amara was surprised to see her mother serving tea to a well-dressed man and a woman she didn't know. They looked wealthy. Their clothes, their manner, the way they spoke. Layla sat beside them, smiling, though her smile seemed rehearsed. "This is my younger daughter, Amara," her mother said proudly. "She just finished her studies." The man smiled warmly. "Oh, wonderful. You must be proud, madam." Amara smiled politely, not understanding why they were there. After the guests left, Layla sighed loudly. "That was awkward," she muttered. "Who were they?" Amara asked. Layla hesitated, then said, "They're friends of Daniel's family." "Daniel?" "My fiancé," Layla said with a small shrug. "Didn't Mom tell you?" "I got engaged last year." Amara blinked in surprise. "No, I didn't know." "That's great, Layla." Layla smiled faintly but didn't look happy. "Yeah, great." That night, Amara found an old photo frame on the side table in the living room. It had a picture of Layla standing next to a tall man with kind eyes, probably Daniel. He didn't look flashy like the men Layla usually liked. He wore simple clothes, a plain shirt, and a quiet smile. There was something honest about him, something gentle. "He looks nice," Amara said when her mother walked in. "He is," her mother replied. "A very good man. Polite, humble, and respectful. But your sister?" She stopped, sighing. "Sometimes I think Layla doesn't see what truly matters." Amara didn't ask more. She knew her mother worried about appearances. Layla had always been the shining star, beautiful, confident, and ambitious. Amara was the quieter one, the listener. Growing up, she was used to being compared, though she never complained. A few weeks passed. The house was busier than usual. Wedding preparations had started, but Amara couldn't ignore the tension growing between Layla and Daniel. Sometimes she overheard them arguing on the phone. Layla would slam her door, and Daniel's car would drive away soon after visiting. One afternoon, Amara went to the market with her mother to buy some fabric. On the way, her mother suddenly said, "You know, Daniel isn't like the other men your sister has dated. He's different." "How so?" Amara asked. "He's very down to earth. He doesn't talk about money or luxury. He works hard, very hard. But Layla doesn't appreciate that. She wants more. She says he doesn't have ambition." Her mother shook her head. "But there's something about him." "I can't explain it." Amara nodded, though she didn't fully understand. That evening, Daniel came to the house for dinner. It was Amara's first time meeting him properly. He greeted everyone politely, shook her father's hand, and brought flowers for her mother. His manners were gentle, his words respectful. During dinner, Amara noticed how he listened when others spoke. Really listened, not just nodded out of courtesy. "So, Amara," Daniel said kindly, "you just finished college?" "Yes," she replied. "I studied literature." "Ah, that explains the books I saw in your room," he said with a small smile. Amara was surprised. "You've been in my room?" He laughed. No, your mother showed me the shelves. She said you've always loved reading. Amara smiled, and something about his tone made her feel comfortable. It was strange, but she felt she could trust him easily. Layla, however, was quiet the whole evening. When Daniel left, she muttered under her breath, "He talks too much." Her mother frowned. He was being kind. Layla rolled her eyes. Mom, he's boring. He doesn't even take me out anywhere nice. He says he's saving money for our future. What future? He's not even successful yet. Amara looked at her sister, surprised at her coldness. He seems like a good man, she said softly. Layla snapped. You don't know anything. Amara, you always see the good in everyone. Her words stung, but Amara stayed silent. Over the next few weeks, things grew worse between Layla and Daniel. The engagement ring came off, then went back on, then off again. The family tried to calm her down, but Layla had made up her mind. One evening, Amara found her parents sitting quietly at the dining table. Her father's hands were folded and her mother's eyes were red. What happened? Amara asked. Layla walked in, tossing her phone on the couch. It's over, she said simply. What do you mean? Her mother asked, voice trembling. I broke it off. I can't do this anymore. I can't marry a man who can't even afford to buy me a decent car. He's too simple, too plain. I need someone who understands my lifestyle. Her father looked at her in disbelief. Layla, do you even hear yourself? That man treated you with respect. He never raised his voice, never complained, and this is how you repay him. Layla shrugged. I don't love him anymore. Her mother began to cry quietly. Amara sat frozen, not sure what to say. That night, after everyone went to their rooms, Amara heard her parents whispering again. What will people say? Her mother said through tears. The engagement was public. Everyone knows. How can we face the neighbors now? Her father sighed deeply. We'll say it was mutual, that they decided to part ways peacefully. But our family's name, we'll handle it, he said firmly. Days passed in silence. Daniel stopped coming and the house felt emptier. Amara missed his calm voice and the warmth he brought into the room. Even though she barely knew him, she felt sorry for how things ended. Then one morning, her mother knocked on her door. Get dressed nicely, Amara. We're going to visit someone. Who? You'll see. They drove across town to a small cafe. When they entered, Amara froze. Daniel was sitting there looking surprised to see her. Her mother smiled nervously. Daniel, thank you for agreeing to meet us. Of course, he said politely. But I wasn't expecting... He glanced at Amara. Her mother laughed softly. Amara just came along to keep me company. They sat down. The conversation was awkward at first. Her mother spoke gently, asking how Daniel was holding up. He said he was fine, though the sadness in his eyes said otherwise. When her mother excused herself to take a call outside, only Amara and Daniel were left at the table. The silence stretched. Finally, she said softly, I'm sorry about my sister. He looked up. It's not your fault. She shouldn't have said those things to you. Daniel smiled faintly. Maybe she was right. Maybe I'm not good enough for her world. Amara shook her head. That's not true. You're honest and kind. Not everyone sees that as weakness. He looked at her for a moment, surprised by her sincerity. You sound like someone who believes in people. I try to, she said. Even when it hurts. They talked a little more, about her studies, about life after college, about dreams. It was simple conversation, but something shifted that day. There was a quiet understanding between them that neither could explain. When they returned home, her mother was uncharacteristically quiet. Later that night, Amara overheard her parents again. He's a good man, her mother said. Better than most. Her father replied, You're not thinking what I think you are you? Why not? Her mother whispered. He knows the family already. He fits in. And Amara is everything Layla isn't. Kind, patient, respectful. Maybe this is fate giving us another chance. Amara felt her heart stop. She didn't hear the rest of the conversation. She just stood there in the hallway, her hands cold. The next morning, Layla announced that she was planning to move to the city for work. She wanted a fresh start, she said, away from all the gossip. Her mother didn't argue. Her father didn't stop her. After Layla left, the house grew quieter, almost peaceful. But for Amara, peace was mixed with confusion. Her mother started speaking more often about Daniel. How he was hard-working, how he respected elders, how he had a good heart. Amara began to sense something strange. One evening, her mother said casually, You know, Daniel is still single. He hasn't said a bad word about our family, even after all that happened. That says something, doesn't it? Amara hesitated. Yes. But Mom, please don't think I'm not saying anything. Her mother interrupted quickly, though her tone suggested otherwise. I just think sometimes life gives second chances in unexpected ways. Amara didn't know what to say. She spent the next few nights restless, replaying her short conversations with Daniel in her mind. There was kindness there, but she couldn't imagine what her parents were planning. Then one day Daniel came to visit again. This time, not as Layla's ex-fiancé, but as a guest. He brought sweets for her parents and spoke warmly to everyone. Amara tried to act normal, but she could feel her mother watching them both carefully, studying every gesture, every word. After he left, her father looked at her mother with suspicion. You're planning something, aren't you? Her mother smiled faintly. I'm just saying, maybe this is what was meant to be all along. That night, Amara lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she could sense that her life was about to change, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for it. After Layla left for the city, the house felt strangely quiet. Amara tried to get used to it, but every room carried a trace of her sister's presence. The perfume on the dresser, the loud laughter that once filled the air, the heels lined up neatly near the door. Everything reminded her of Layla. But what Amara didn't expect was how quickly her parents started to move on from her sister's broken engagement. Within a few weeks, her mother's tone began to change. She spoke less about the embarrassment and more about possibilities. She started dropping Daniel's name into small casual conversations, pretending it meant nothing. Daniel called today, she would say while cutting vegetables. He asked about your father's health. Such a nice man. Not many would still care after what happened. Or sometimes, he's been helping his friend start a small business. Hardworking people like him always find success sooner or later. Amara listened quietly, unsure what to say. She respected Daniel, but she couldn't ignore the feeling that her mother was planning something. One evening, while Amara was in the kitchen washing dishes, her father came home from work looking tired. Her mother followed him, holding a cup of tea. Guess who I ran into at the market today, she said with a smile. Daniel. Her father looked up slowly. And? He said he wanted to visit us one day. I told him he's always welcome. Her father frowned slightly. You shouldn't encourage that. People will talk about what? She said innocently. He's like family. Her father sighed, clearly not convinced. Amara stayed silent, but her heart began to beat faster. 2 days later, Daniel came by. Amara wasn't expecting him, but when she heard his voice in the living room, something inside her fluttered, a mix of surprise and confusion. He brought a box of sweets, saying it was for her father, and some homemade snacks for her mother. When Amara entered the room with tea, Daniel smiled at her in a way that made her cheeks warm. Hello, Amara, he said gently. How have you been? I'm fine, she said softly. It's been quiet since Layla left. He nodded slowly. Yes, I heard. I hope she's doing well. Amara looked at him. There was no anger in his voice, no bitterness. Just calm acceptance. She admired that about him, how he carried his pain quietly without blame. They talked for a while about ordinary things, the weather, work, family. But beneath the surface, something unspoken passed between them. Her parents watched them closely, exchanging knowing looks. After Daniel left, her mother said casually, He's such a gentleman. You can tell he comes from a good family. Amara didn't reply. She just went to her room and sat by the window thinking about his smile. The next week, Daniel visited again. This time, her father joined him in the garden for tea. Amara watched from the kitchen as they spoke. Her father's face softened as the conversation went on, and by the end, they were laughing together. Later, her mother said quietly, You see, your father likes him. He respects good manners. Amara felt her throat tighten. Mom, she said carefully, are you trying to arrange something? Her mother smiled faintly. I'm not arranging anything. I'm just keeping doors open. Life has strange ways of fixing what's broken, you know. Amara wanted to argue, but her mother's words hung heavy in the air. Over the next month, Daniel became a familiar face again. He visited on weekends, sometimes bringing groceries for her parents, sometimes just stopping by for tea. Amara noticed how easily he fit into their home, as if he had never left. One afternoon, Amara found herself walking in the garden when Daniel appeared at the gate. He carried a small plant pot in his hands. "I thought your mother might like this," he said. "She mentioned she wanted to grow herbs." Amara smiled. "She'll be happy. She's been talking about it for weeks." Daniel placed the pot carefully on the ground. "You have a peaceful home," he said after a pause. "It feels real here, honest." Amara looked down at the flowers, unsure how to respond. "We try," she said softly. He smiled, then turned to her. "I'm glad I met you that day at the cafe. You were kind when I didn't deserve kindness." She shook her head. "You didn't do anything wrong," he sighed. "Maybe not, but I did fall for an illusion. I thought love was about admiration, about being seen. But it's not. It's about understanding, isn't it?" Amara felt her heart skip. She didn't know what to say, so she simply nodded. Her mother watched them from the balcony, a faint smile playing on her lips. That evening after dinner, her mother asked her father to stay a moment in the living room. Amara pretended to be busy, but she overheard them. "He likes her," her mother said quietly. "Anyone can see it." Her father hesitated. "And what about her? Does she?" "I think she's confused," her mother said. "But feelings can grow. You know Amara. She doesn't chase things, but she values goodness." Her father sighed. "I just don't want her to feel pressured. She deserves to choose for herself." "I agree," her mother said softly, "but maybe we can guide her to see what's already in front of her." Amara didn't sleep well that night. Her thoughts were tangled. Part of her felt warmth when she thought of Daniel, but another part of her felt guilt for feeling anything at all. He had been her sister's fiancé after all. The next day, her father asked her to help him with some paperwork in the living room. While they worked, her mother came in holding a tray of snacks. "Daniel might stop by later," she said casually. "He wanted to discuss something with your father." Amara's heart jumped. "What about?" Her mother shrugged. "Something about business, I think." But when Daniel arrived, it wasn't business he wanted to talk about. After tea, her father asked Amara to go fetch some documents from his room. When she returned, the air felt heavier. Daniel was sitting upright, his hands clasped, and her parents were both looking at him with serious expressions. Her father spoke first. "Amara, Daniel has something to say." Amara's hands trembled slightly. She set the papers down and looked at him. Daniel took a slow breath. "I wanted to speak with you and with your parents. I know this might sound unexpected, but after these past few months, I've come to respect your family deeply. I've come to care about you, Amara." Amara froze. She felt her breath catch. Daniel continued, his voice steady. "I know this situation is complicated, and I never planned for it to happen. But I can't deny that I feel something genuine. I've seen your kindness, your honesty, the way you treat people. You remind me what love is supposed to feel like." Her mother clasped her hands together, eyes glistening. Her father stayed silent, watching Amara closely. Amara didn't know what to say. Her heart was racing, but her mind was spinning. "Daniel," she began, her voice barely a whisper. "You were engaged to my sister." He nodded slowly. "Yes, and I thought she was the one. But that chapter is over. It ended before I met you properly. What I feel now isn't a replacement, it's something new. Something honest." Amara's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know what to say. I respect you, but I'm scared. What will people think?" Her father spoke then, calm but firm. "People will always talk. What matters is truth. And if this is sincere, it deserves to be considered." Her mother reached for Amara's hand. "No one can force you. But don't let fear stop you from being happy." Amara looked from one face to another. Her mother's hopeful eyes, her father's quiet support, and Daniel's calm patience. She excused herself and went to her room. Sitting on her bed, she stared at the floor, her thoughts tangled in a storm. Hours passed. When she finally came back, Daniel was preparing to leave. She walked up to him quietly. "Can I ask you something?" she said softly. "Of course. If my parents weren't involved, if there was no history, no pressure, would you still feel the same?" Daniel looked into her eyes. "Yes," he said without hesitation. "Because I fell for you, not for convenience. I fell for the way you see people. Not for who they are, but for who they could be." Her heart ached at his words. She nodded slowly, unsure of what else to say. After he left, her parents gave her space. They didn't push. Days turned into weeks, and though Daniel didn't visit as often, He still called to check in on her father's health or to ask if they needed anything. Amara began to notice how much she missed his presence, his quiet jokes, his gentle tone, his ability to make everyone feel calm. One afternoon, she went to the market to buy vegetables. As she was paying, she saw Daniel across the street helping an elderly man carry heavy bags. He didn't notice her, but she watched him for a moment. There was something so genuine about him. No show, no arrogance. That night, she couldn't stop thinking about what she had seen. The next morning, her mother caught her humming while cooking. "You seem happy," she teased. Amara smiled shyly. "Just thinking." Her mother gave her a knowing look. "Thinking about Daniel?" Amara blushed. "Maybe," her mother laughed softly. "You don't need to rush. Sometimes hearts know before minds do." Weeks later, Daniel came again, this time with his parents. Amara was surprised. His parents were warm, gentle people. They spoke kindly and treated her family with respect. After tea, Daniel's mother said quietly to Amara's parents, "We know what happened before, but we believe God writes every story for a reason. If you're open to it, we'd be honored to welcome Amara into our family." Amara felt her hands go cold. Everything was happening so fast. Her father turned to her. "Amara, this is your decision. No one else's." She looked at Daniel, then at her parents. Her heart was full of fear and hope at the same time. Finally, she said softly, "I need time." Daniel smiled. "Take all the time you need. I'll wait." After they left, Amara went to her room again. She thought about everything. Her sister's pride, her parents' worry, Daniel's patience. She thought about how love can appear in unexpected places, how people can change, how life can surprise you. Outside, the wind was gentle, carrying the scent of rain. She closed her eyes and whispered to herself, "Maybe this isn't wrong. Maybe it's just fate finding its way back." She didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was clear. Her heart was no longer still. Something had begun to stir inside her, something real, something that could no longer be ignored, and deep down, she knew. This was only the beginning of a choice that would change everything. Days turned into weeks, and weeks slowly became months. The house began to feel warm again, filled with quiet laughter and evening conversations. Amara had started tutoring a few neighborhood kids to keep herself busy, while her parents seemed lighter than before. But no matter how normal everything seemed, there was always one name that lingered in the air: Daniel. He didn't come around as often as before, but he called sometimes. Whenever her father's health was mentioned, he'd send medicines or fruits. Sometimes a message would arrive through her mother. "Daniel asked how you were doing." Every time she heard that, Amara felt something move gently inside her, like a wave that refused to settle. One evening, as she was reading in her room, her mother knocked softly. "Amara, are you free tomorrow?" "Yes, why?" "There's a wedding in the neighborhood. I thought we could go together." Amara smiled. "Of course." The next day when they reached the wedding, Amara saw Daniel there. He was standing near the entrance, dressed neatly in a light-colored suit. Their eyes met across the crowd, and something unspoken passed between them. He came forward to greet her parents first, bowing respectfully. Then he turned to her and smiled gently. "It's been a while." "Yes," she said, feeling suddenly shy. "It has." Throughout the evening, she found herself glancing at him more than she intended. He seemed different, calmer, more sure of himself. When he laughed, there was warmth in his eyes that reached her heart before she could look away. Later, as she helped serve tea, Daniel came to stand beside her quietly. "Do you still read a lot?" he asked with a small smile. She nodded. "Every night. It helps me think less," he chuckled softly. "Thinking less sounds like a good idea." For a few seconds, they stood in silence, the noise of the crowd fading into the background. It felt natural, comfortable, like they had known each other far longer than they actually had. That night, when they returned home, her mother seemed unusually cheerful. She hummed while changing her clothes and smiled at Amara every now and then. "What?" Amara asked, pretending not to notice. Her mother grinned. "Nothing. Just happy to see you smile again." Amara blushed slightly and looked away. A few days later, Daniel called her father. He said he wanted to visit again, this time to talk about something important. Her father agreed, though he didn't say what it was about. When the day came, Amara was helping in the kitchen when she heard Daniel's car outside. Her mother hurried to fix her scarf and her father straightened his shirt. Amara's heart raced without reason. Daniel greeted everyone politely, as he always did. But this time there was a seriousness in his voice, a quiet determination. After some tea and small talk, he turned to her parents. "Uncle, Auntie," he said respectfully, "I came today with something important to ask. I've thought about it for a long time and I wanted to speak to you before saying anything to Amara." Her father leaned forward slightly. "Go on, son." Daniel took a deep breath. "I would like to ask for Amara's hand in marriage." The room fell silent. Her mother's eyes widened with surprise and her father looked at him speechless. Amara, standing at the doorway holding a tray, froze in place. Daniel continued calmly. "I know how this must sound considering the past. I was once engaged to Layla and that didn't end well. But what I feel for Amara is different. It's not rushed or forced. It grew with respect and honesty. I admire her, and I believe we can build a life based on understanding." Her mother wiped her eyes quietly, overwhelmed. Her father stayed silent for a moment before speaking. "Daniel," he said slowly, "this is not a small thing you're asking. The past was complicated. People might not understand." "I know," Daniel said gently, "but I'm not worried about people anymore. I only want to do what feels right. I'll take whatever comes with it, judgment, gossip, anything. I just want your blessing." Amara's hands trembled. She felt her heart pounding as she lowered the tray onto the table. Her father looked at her and said softly, "Amara, what do you say?" She looked at Daniel, her voice barely steady. I don't know. This is too sudden." He nodded, smiling gently. "I understand. I just wanted to be honest about how I feel. You don't have to decide now." Her mother placed a hand over Amara's. "Think about it, dear. He's a good man." After he left, the house was silent for a long time. Her father finally said, "He's serious." "You can tell from his eyes," her mother agreed quietly. "And he's patient. He'll wait if she needs time." That night, Amara sat by the window watching the moon. The night breeze felt soft against her face, but her thoughts were restless. She liked him, she knew that. But fear still whispered inside her. What if it was wrong? What if people judged her? A week later, she met Daniel again. It was her father who suggested she talk to him alone, just to be sure of what she wanted. They met at a quiet cafe near the lake. Daniel was already there, sitting by the window. When she arrived, he stood up politely, smiling in that calm way that always put her at ease. "I didn't mean to pressure you," he said gently. "I just wanted you to know how I feel." Amara stirred her coffee slowly. "I know. I've been thinking about it. I just don't want to make a decision based on what others expect." "That's fair," he said, "but I'm not expecting anything. I'll respect whatever you choose. I just wanted to be honest." She looked at him. "You've changed, Daniel. You seem more peaceful," he smiled faintly. "Maybe I've learned what really matters. Losing Layla hurt, not because I loved her deeply, but because it showed me what I was blind to, that money and status can't build love. Real love doesn't come with conditions. It just grows quietly." Amara nodded, her heart softening. "You're right." They talked for hours, about family, about dreams, about the simple things they wanted in life. For the first time, Amara felt like she could see the real Daniel, not the man her sister had dismissed, not the broken fiancé, but someone genuine and kind. When they left, Daniel walked her to the car. Before she got in, he said softly, "No matter what happens, I'll always be grateful that I met you." Amara smiled. "You don't have to thank me." "I do," he said, looking into her eyes, "because you reminded me that love doesn't need to be loud to be real." Over the next few weeks, Amara's heart slowly began to accept what her mind was afraid to. She realized that she looked forward to his calls, that her days felt emptier without his voice. Her parents noticed, too. Her mother began quietly preparing things, not for a wedding yet, but just in case. Then one afternoon, Daniel came again, this time with his parents. Amara hadn't been told beforehand. She was in the kitchen when she heard laughter from the living room. When she came out, she saw Daniel's parents sitting comfortably on the couch, speaking kindly with hers. Her mother looked at her and said, "Come, greet them properly." Amara did, politely lowering her eyes as she sat beside her mother. Daniel smiled at her reassuringly. His mother spoke warmly. "We know this might seem sudden, my dear, but Daniel has told us everything. We wanted to come ourselves to meet you and your family, Amara nodded, unsure what to say. His mother continued, "We aren't here to rush anything. We only wanted to say that if you agree, we'd be happy to welcome you into our family." Her heart skipped. She glanced at Daniel, who gave a soft, encouraging nod. After they left, her parents sat quietly for a long time. Finally, her father said, "Amara, they seem sincere. What are you thinking?" She took a deep breath. "I don't want to say yes or no yet. I just need to be sure." Her mother smiled softly. "That's all right. Take your time." The next few days were full of confusion for her. She found herself smiling at small memories. Daniel's calm voice, his way of listening without interrupting, the way he looked at her like she was someone who mattered. But deep down, one thought still haunted her. What if Layla found out? That fear grew when one morning her phone rang. It was Layla. "Amara, how are you?" Layla's voice was cheerful but distant. "I heard Daniel still visits sometimes." "Is that true?" Amara's heart pounded. "Sometimes, yes. He checks on Mom and Dad." Layla laughed. "He's too nice for his own good. I hope he's not still hung up on me." Amara swallowed hard. "No, I don't think so." "Good," Layla said. "Anyway, I might visit next month. I have so much to tell you. Maybe I'll bring someone special." After they hung up, Amara sat still for a long time. The idea of her sister returning made her nervous. What if it ruined everything? That evening, she met Daniel again. They sat by the same lake where they had met before. The sky was turning orange, the reflection of the sunset dancing on the water. She finally told him. Layla called. "She's coming back." Daniel stayed quiet for a moment, then said softly, "I was expecting that someday." "Are you okay with it?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "Yes, I've made peace with the past. She's part of my story but not my future. You are the one I see when I think of home." Her eyes filled with tears. "Daniel, people will talk. They'll say terrible things." He smiled gently. "Let them. What matters is that we know the truth. I don't want to hide anymore. If you say yes, I'll talk to your sister myself. I'll tell her everything." Amara looked at him speechless. For the first time, she realized how strong he really was. That night, when she told her parents, her father said quietly, "If he's brave enough to face it, maybe you should be too." And so a week later, Amara finally gave her answer. She met Daniel in the garden. Under the old tree her father had planted years ago. The air was still, the sky painted with soft gold. "I've thought about everything," she said, "and I've decided, yes, I'll marry you." Daniel didn't move for a second. Then a smile spread across his face, slow, deep, and full of gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered. "I'll never let you regret it." He held her hand gently, not tightly, just enough for her to feel the promise in his touch. As they stood there, a quiet breeze moved through the leaves. For the first time, Amara felt peace. The doubts that had followed her for months seemed to fade, but neither of them knew that beneath the calm surface a storm was waiting. Because hidden truths have a way of finding their way back. And soon the truth about who Daniel really was would change everything again. The weeks after Amara agreed to marry Daniel felt surreal. There was a quiet happiness in the house, like sunlight spilling through every room, warm and comforting. Her parents were overjoyed, moving about with a nervous energy that made the walls feel alive. Daniel visited often, sometimes alone, sometimes with his parents, and each time, Amara felt a sense of ease she had never known before. But life, she was beginning to realize, never let things stay simple for long. One afternoon, Amara was organizing the kitchen drawers when she found a small envelope tucked between the pages of her mother's recipe book. It wasn't addressed to anyone in particular, just a name written in neat handwriting. Amara. Curious, she opened it. Inside was a note, short and abrupt. "Meet me tomorrow at the cafe near the library. There is something you need to know about Daniel. Come alone." Her heart skipped. She recognized the handwriting immediately. It was Layla's. The words hit her like a sudden chill. What did Layla know? What could she possibly want to tell her? Amara spent the rest of the evening in a quiet panic. She couldn't bring herself to ask her parents, not yet. They were too happy, too hopeful, too trusting. She wanted to protect them from worry. But the note left her restless, unable to focus on anything else. The next morning, she walked slowly to the cafe, clutching the note in her hand. When she arrived, she saw Layla sitting in a corner, her posture tense, her eyes fixed on the door. "Layla," Amara said cautiously, taking a seat across from her. Layla's lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't smile. "You came." "Yes," Amara said softly. "You said there was something I needed to know?" Layla looked down at her coffee for a moment, then met her eyes again. "I didn't want to tell you this before, but Daniel isn't who you think he is." Amara felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. "What do you mean? He's wealthy," Layla said finally, her voice low. "Not just well off, and he's a millionaire. He's been hiding it. He told me when we were engaged that he wanted me for me. Not for my family or money, but he lied about how much he really has. He didn't trust anyone to know the truth." Amara's mouth went dry. She had suspected nothing. Every time she had seen him, he had seemed so simple, so grounded. How could he have kept this from everyone? From her? Layla leaned closer, her voice dropping further. "I know it sounds like a betrayal, but I didn't want to interfere. You think he's honest, and in many ways he is, but he's hiding a big part of himself. You need to decide if you can handle that before—" She trailed off, not finishing her sentence. Amara sat back in her chair, struggling to breathe. Her mind raced with questions. Why didn't he tell her? Was it a test? Did he plan to manipulate her somehow? Or had he really fallen for her just like he claimed? "I need time," she whispered finally. Layla nodded. "Take all the time you need. But don't go into this blind." Amara left the cafe, her hands trembling. The sun shone brightly above, but it felt sharp and cold. She walked home slowly, her thoughts spinning. Every memory she had of Daniel, the quiet afternoons, the gentle smiles, the way he listened, suddenly felt layered with uncertainty. When she got home, her parents were in the garden, arranging flowers. They looked up, expecting her usual cheerful greeting. "Amara," her mother said, "you're quiet today. Everything okay?" She forced a small smile. "Yes, just tired." Her father gave her a warm look. "Rest if you need to. Daniel will be here later." She nodded, unable to speak. The thought of seeing him again, knowing what she now knew, made her heart heavy. That evening, Daniel arrived as usual. He brought a small bouquet of wildflowers, his smile gentle and patient. Her parents welcomed him warmly, but Amara barely looked at him. "Are you all right?" Daniel asked softly, noticing her distant expression. "I'm fine," she said, trying to sound normal. "Just a long day." He didn't push further, but she noticed the concern in his eyes. He always noticed, and that made her heart ache even more. She wanted to tell him what Layla had said. But how could she? How could she possibly confront him with this secret, knowing that he had trusted her enough to stay quiet for so long? Days passed. Amara tried to act normal, but inside she was restless. She couldn't eat properly, couldn't sleep well. Her parents noticed her mood, but she kept her distance, afraid to tell them what had happened. Finally, one afternoon, she couldn't bear it any longer. She found Daniel alone in the garden, pruning the rose bushes. "Daniel," she said softly. He turned and smiled. "Amara, you look worried. What's on your mind?" She took a deep breath. I need to know the truth. Layla told me something. She said you're hiding. A lot. She said you're wealthy. That you weren't honest about everything." Daniel's expression softened, but his eyes didn't waver. He set down the pruning shears and came closer. "Amara," he said quietly, "I wanted to tell you. I wanted to, but I didn't know how. I wanted you to know me first, not my money, not my status. I wanted you to fall for who I am, not what I have." Amara shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. "But why not tell me? Why hide it?" "Because I didn't want it to change anything," he said gently. "I wanted to see if what we feel is real, and it is. Every moment with you has been honest. Every word, every laugh, every silence. That part of me, my wealth, and it doesn't matter. Not to you and not to me. I just wanted you to see me first." Amara's throat tightened. She wanted to believe him, but a part of her still felt betrayed. I don't know if I can trust this. Everything felt simple, and now it feels complicated." He nodded, taking a careful step closer. "I understand. You have every right to feel that way. I can't ask you to believe me blindly. But I promise you, and nothing about my feelings for you has been false, nothing. You've always been my choice, Amara. Not my money, not my family, not anything else. Just you." She looked into his eyes, searching for any hint of deception. There was none. Only sincerity, calm and steady. Days turned into nights, and Amara spent long hours reflecting on their conversations, their moments together. The subtle gestures he had made that showed care without expectation. Slowly the fear began to soften. She realized that his honesty now in the face of everything was real. But the worry of her family's reaction, the fear of Layla's judgment, and the uncertainty of gossip in the community made her hesitant. She wanted to protect herself and her parents even as her heart ached to be with him fully. One evening, Daniel came to visit again. This time he spoke directly to her parents. "I want to be honest with you," he said respectfully. "I haven't told Amara about everything because I wanted her to see who I am first. But she deserves the truth now. I am wealthy, yes. I come from a family with resources, but that has never influenced my feelings for her. I love her for who she is, not for convenience or status." Her mother's eyes filled with tears. Her father stayed silent, processing the words. Amara felt a sudden rush of relief and confusion all at once. Relief because Daniel's words were consistent with his actions, and confusion because she realized how much she had feared the unknown. "Amara," Daniel said softly, turning to her, "I hope you can trust me. I will never deceive you about what truly matters. My love, my respect, my heart, they are yours. Always." She looked at him, her chest tight. The fear that had been gnawing at her heart slowly began to fade. I believe you," she whispered. Daniel smiled, but it wasn't triumphant. It was quiet, gentle, patient. He took her hand without rushing, holding it like a promise. Over the next days, Amara began to accept the truth. She realized that honesty and patience meant more than wealth or status. She started to see Daniel not as someone hiding secrets, but as someone who had been brave enough to show his true self gradually, allowing her to see him for who he really was. But even as she began to trust him fully, the thought of Layla returning lingered in the back of her mind. She didn't know how her sister would react to the news of their growing relationship, and that uncertainty made her cautious. Still, something inside her had shifted. She felt a quiet strength she hadn't known before, a willingness to face the unknown, to face judgment, to face life, because now she wasn't alone. Daniel's presence, steady and unwavering, gave her courage, and though the storm of revelation had arrived, it hadn't destroyed them. Instead, it had shown her the depth of his character and the sincerity of his love. Amara finally allowed herself to imagine a future where trust, respect, and understanding came before everything else. A life that felt real, honest and full of possibility, but she knew, deep down, that soon she would have to confront not just her own fears, but her sister's feelings and the world's opinions, and that challenge would test the strength of everything they had built together. The days leading up to the wedding were a whirlwind of activity. The house buzzed with excitement as invitations were sent, flowers were arranged, and clothes were prepared. Amara moved through it all with a quiet grace, smiling politely and helping where she could. But inside, her heart was heavy with thought, a mixture of anticipation and anxiety she couldn't shake. Daniel was patient, as always. He visited daily, offering gentle words of encouragement and support. Yet he could sense that Amara's mind was elsewhere, carrying a weight that she refused to share fully. Every time she looked at him, her heart warmed, but there was a hesitation there, a lingering doubt. One evening, as they walked in the garden after dinner, Daniel spoke softly. "Amara, you seem distant. What's on your mind?" She stopped and looked at him, struggling to find the right words. "Daniel, I'm happy, I really am. But I keep thinking about Layla, about what she might say when she hears about us, about the wedding. What if it changes everything?" Daniel took her hands gently in his. "Nothing she says can change how I feel. I am here because of you, not because of anything else. We can face whatever comes together." She nodded, trying to take comfort in his words, but the worry gnawed at her. Layla's sudden appearance in her life had taught her that the past could return without warning. The day before the wedding, Amara's mother called her into the living room. "Amara, come sit with me," she said, her voice gentle. "I want to talk to you about something important." Amara obeyed, sitting beside her mother. "What is it, Mom?" Her mother took her hands in hers. "I know you're worried about Layla. I know you're scared about how people will react. But you have to remember, and this is your life, Amara. You have the right to choose, and you have the right to be happy. No one else's opinions matter more than yours." Amara's eyes filled with tears. "I know, Mom, I want to do the right thing. I don't want anyone hurt, especially Daniel. Her mother smiled. You're already being brave by thinking about others. But sometimes being brave means making choices for yourself, not just for others. That night, Amara couldn't sleep. She lay in her bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about every moment that had led her here. Daniel's quiet patience, the way he had stayed honest, her parents' unwavering support, and the truth that Layla had revealed. Morning came too soon. The house was filled with laughter and chatter as family members arrived for the ceremony. Amara moved carefully through it all, her heart pounding in her chest. She dressed in a simple yet elegant gown, feeling the weight of expectation settle on her shoulders. Daniel arrived shortly before the ceremony. He was calm, his usual gentle smile on his face. "Are you ready?" he asked softly. Amara nodded, though her hands trembled. "As ready as I can be." They walked together toward the venue, the garden outside filled with sunlight and flowers. Everything seemed perfect, almost unreal. Yet deep down, Amara knew that the day held a test. A choice she would have to make in front of everyone, a choice that could change everything. As they reached the altar, she saw her parents smiling proudly. Daniel's parents stood nearby, kind and supportive. Guests whispered quietly, their excitement palpable. And then, at the edge of the crowd, she saw her sister, Layla. Layla's eyes widened as she saw Daniel. Her gaze shifted to Amara, and for a moment, Amara saw a flash of surprise, then something else. Perhaps regret. Perhaps disbelief. The ceremony began, and Amara felt every word, every glance, every smile weighing heavily on her heart. She recited her vows, her voice steady but soft. Daniel did the same, his eyes never leaving hers. But as the officiant asked her to take Daniel's hand and say, "I do," Amara felt a surge of courage rise within her. She thought about honesty, about choice, about her own heart. She thought about the past, about Layla, about the whispers of the crowd, about what truly mattered. Her eyes turned to Daniel. "Wait," she said, her voice clear and strong. The ceremony paused. Everyone looked at her, startled. Daniel's face was calm, but his eyes searched hers. "Amara?" She took a deep breath. "I need to say something before we continue. This day, this moment. It's meant to be happy, but I cannot take this step without being completely honest, and I cannot hide the truth from anyone." A hush fell over the guests. Her parents looked at her in concern. Layla's eyes widened further. Amara spoke, her voice gaining strength with every word. "Daniel and I love each other. That is true. But there is something more. He is not just the kind, patient man you all know. He is also someone who has been honest about everything, even the parts that are hard to see. And I want to acknowledge that before we begin this marriage. I want to stand here as myself, making a choice freely, without pressure, without expectation." Daniel's hand found hers, squeezing gently. "Amara, you don't have to explain. I understand." She looked around at the crowd, seeing the mix of surprise, curiosity, and admiration. "I choose him," she said, her voice ringing clear. "Not because of status, not because of anyone's plan, but because he is the one I love. And I will not hide my heart or our truth from anyone." A soft murmur ran through the guests. Layla's face changed. Surprise, confusion, perhaps a touch of shame. She stepped forward slowly. I didn't expect this," she said quietly, her voice low. You thought I would follow a path that wasn't mine," Amara said gently, not angrily. "But this is my choice. You made your decisions, Layla. I am making mine." Layla's eyes softened. I see that. And I hope you are happy." "Truly." Amara nodded, relief flooding her chest. She turned back to Daniel, her heart steady now. "Are we ready?" she whispered. Daniel smiled, a mixture of love and pride in his eyes. "We are." The ceremony resumed. This time there was no hesitation, no doubt. Amara and Daniel exchanged vows with clarity, with honesty, with hearts fully open. Every word felt real, every gesture felt genuine. When they were pronounced husband and wife, the applause was loud, but Amara barely noticed. Her eyes were fixed on Daniel. She felt a warmth she had never known, a certainty that they were entering something real, something that could not be shaken by gossip or fear. After the ceremony, the celebration began. Guests danced, laughed, and shared in their joy. Her parents beamed with pride. Daniel's parents embraced Amara warmly, welcoming her as their own. Even Layla smiled. a genuine warmth in her eyes. As the evening drew to a close, Amara and Daniel found a quiet moment alone in the garden. The stars were beginning to appear, scattered across the sky like a gentle promise. "You were brave today," Daniel said softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "So were you," Amara replied, smiling. "You waited, you trusted, and you loved honestly. That gave me strength." He held her hands gently. "And now we can face everything together. No secrets, no fear, just us." She rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart. For the first time, she truly believed in their future. A future built on trust, respect and love that had grown slowly, honestly, and patiently. In that moment, she realized something important. Happiness wasn't about perfection. It wasn't about appearances, wealth, or status. It was about honesty, courage, and the willingness to choose love, even when the world might not understand. And for Amara, the choice she made that day, to speak her truth, to stand for herself, to embrace love fully, was the moment that would define the rest of her life. The night continued, filled with laughter, music, and the warmth of family and friends. But in the quiet corners of her heart, Amara knew something deeper had been sealed, a promise not of wealth or grandeur, but of trust, respect, and love that would last far.